now that it was during the financial crisis in 2008 because recent memories of that crisis and regulatory improvements have made the banking system less vulnerable. He noted, however, that the vulnerabilities that he and Dybvig have identified extend beyond banks and can bubble up in other parts of the financial system, such as insurance firms or mutual funds. The economic award of one of the highest honors in the field is not technically a Nobel Prize. It is called the Savage Wisbank Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel, but it wasn't among the original categories that Alfred Nobel set out in his will in 1895. It is funded by Sweden's central bank and has been given out only since 1969, though the Nobel Committee promotes it and lists it on its website.
And moving on to Dubai, a Chinese firm has tested out an electric farm taxi on Monday, offering a glimpse of futuristic technology that could one day whisk people through cities high above any traffic. The Xpeng X2, developed by Guangzhou-based Xpeng Incorporation, aviation affiliate, is one of the dozens of flying car projects around the world. Only a handful have been successfully tested with passengers on board, and it will likely to be many years before any are put into service. Monday's demonstration was held with an empty cockpit, but the company says it carried out a manned flight test in July 2021. The sleekly designed vehicle can carry 2 passengers and is powered by a set of 8 propellers. The company says it has a top speed of 130 kilometers per hour. Unlike aeroplanes and helicopters, eVTOL, or electric vertical takeoff and landing, vehicles offer quick point-to-point personal travel, at least in principle. The pilotless vehicle could one day ferry passengers across towns high above congested roadways. But the sector still faces major challenges, including battery life, air traffic control, safety, and infrastructure issues.
And moving on to post offices and cash. The British Post Office branches handle increased amounts of cash in August as banks close branches and the cost of living bites. The Post Office handled £3.45 billion in cash in August, the highest total since it began recording volumes 5 years ago. It says it expects the trend to continue due to rising living costs and tighter budgets. Some people say they find it easier to monitor spending by using notes and coins rather than electronic payments. People typically use less cash in August, the state-owned company said. But this year, branches dealt with record-breaking amounts of cash. During the worst of the pandemic, all transactions fell, but cash use dropped particularly sharply as shopkeepers preferred contactless methods. Martin Kersley, banking director of the Post Office, said, "We expect cash transactions to continue to exceed expectations in October and for the rest of the year." Cash transactions include personal deposits and withdrawals from post office accounts as well as business use. People relied on the 11,500 local post office branches around the country. Banks have been closing branches across the UK, leaving some communities with no access to banking services at all. As part of efforts to ensure individuals and businesses can still access banking services, the Post Office is running pilots of shared banking hubs in 2 locations, with another 13 locations also marked for hubs. Customers of most banks can already use post office counters for basic banking, but at the hubs there is a wider range of services, and the banks taking part send representatives once a week to help customers. But while the post office is processing more cash transactions in the short term, over the longer term, the trend away from cash is set to continue, with UK Finance, the body representing the banking industry, forecasting cash will account for only 6% of payments by 2031. The use of notes and coins has already fallen dramatically over the last decade, from 55% of payments in 2011 to 15% last year.
And moving on to Titanic. And maybe we'll have that in our evening news hour. And that wraps up the international business news as well as the midday news hour. Thank you for listening. And that concludes the international business news. For advertisements, please write to Voice of Thailand 2022@gmail.com or call 080-282-6646.
FM 88, the Voice of Thailand.
Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and our website.
Hi, fans of Voice of Thailand FM 88. Check out our website for news and great content. It's www.fm88-voice-of-thailand.com. There's 3 hyphens, don't forget, and have a great day.
On June 21st, 2022, the Fiscal Policy Office of the Ministry of Finance, in conjunction with the Securities and Exchange Commission of Thailand, or SEC, held the APEC Seminar on Developing the Ecosystem for Sustainable Finance in the Capital Market and Digitalization for Inclusive Finance, Embracing the Digital Fundraising, with the support of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, in the margin of the APEC Senior Finance Officials Meeting, or SFOM, in Khon Kaen Province. The seminar comprised 3 sections. First, Sustainable Finance and Digitalization, Views from Policymakers. Second, Developing the Ecosystem for Sustainable Finance in the Capital Market. And third, Digitalization for Inclusive Finance, Embracing the Digital Fundraising. During the first section on sustainable finance and digitalization, the discussion emphasized the importance of aligning budgeting and fundraising plans with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the need for a financial framework that responds to the economic and environmental needs of APEC member economies. The second seminar on developing the ecosystem for sustainable finance in the capital market focused on 2 topics. First, an ecosystem for sustainable finance, and second, sustainable finance taxonomy and sustainable financial transition. Discussion of the first topic, developing the ecosystem for sustainable finance in the capital market, was led by Ms. Runwati Suwanmongkol, Secretary General of the SEC, and representatives from the Ministry of Finance of Indonesia, Financial Service Agency of Japan, and the Sustainable Finance Institute Asia. The importance of the environment, social governance, or ESG concept, and an ecosystem for sustainable finance with participation from the public sector in developing disclosure and governance standards were emphasized. The second topic dealt with sustainable finance taxonomies and transition finance frameworks for emerging economies and price-based carbon mitigation measures. Speakers shared their experiences and lessons learned regarding development of sustainable finance taxonomy and financial instruments to help firms' transition towards more sustainability-driven products. The third section on digitalization for inclusive finance focused on policy and regulatory framework and digital technologies to facilitate SMEs fundraising in capital markets. In the case of Thailand, the SEC has introduced crowdfunding as a means of capital fundraising for SMEs and startup entrepreneurs. As of May 31st, 2022, through crowdfunding, the private sector has raised almost $76 million. In addition, the private sector can raise funds through initial coin offerings, or ICOs, in the form of digital tokens, which have been approved by the SEC. The seminar offered an opportunity for APEC member economies to incubate ideas on how to create an ecosystem for sustainable finance in capital markets. Conclusions and key takeaways from all the 3 sessions will be further developed into policy recommendations to be presented at the 29th APEC Finance Ministers meeting in October of 2022.
Continuing its zero-tolerance policy against corruption, the government of Thailand has passionately encouraged state officials and civil servants to minimize, avoid, and seize any dishonest behavior affecting their assets or position, and told that they must stop veiled benefits, the receiving of gifts or gratuity, misuse of state property, and the use of favor. Thailand's public officials have been directed to get hands-on against corruption.
Disasters have become a huge threat,
Rapid population growth, urbanization, poverty, and climate change have made Thailand and countries around the world vulnerable. The need to prepare for a world of unexpected shocks has become clearer than ever. The Thai government supports all efforts to sustainably improve local preparedness and response capacity, ultimately preventing and reducing the impacts of disasters on communities and all Thais.